Quality Remodeling. View their stunning transformations online at the number 4 everremodeling.com.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560. The Answer.
Welcome back. Thanks for joining us on Dan's show. He's off today. It's Jim Urio and Jeannie Ives sitting in for Dan. And speaking of sharp opinions, Jim, how about this guy from New York City? He seems to know how to make sure that businesses stays in New York.
What do you say to those folks who say, well, if you tax millionaires, they're going to leave the city, and the top 1% pays 40% of the taxes in the city, so what happens if they leave? What's your response?
Well, that's what I would say. It's like we should take their business, and we run it like for the city ourselves.
So if they take their business to Florida, you feel like you can keep it here?
I mean, they can't leave the building. They can't just bring their whole entire workforce to Florida, right? They can't bring all of the resources that they have to build the business here to Florida, right? That's a whole thing. And that's where we would even say, if we're building a real movement, right, to stop that, we'd also make it illegal for them to actually leave, right? We would fine them to hell if they're going to try to abandon their property here, right? Because clearly people do need to work, right? People do need to make a living.
So there you have it.
Do we even need to have a comment on that? It's the most asinine thing I've ever heard. And again, it is completely shows how the notion of socialism graduates not slowly, graduates quickly to totalitarianism. That's too early in the morning to say that word. Authoritarianism and communism and fascism, whatever you want to call it. It becomes violent quickly when people start to move away and no, we'll just take their business. But anyway, sorry.
Well, somebody who knows a lot more about this than us because he lives it and writes about it is Steve Malanga. He's a contributing editor to City Journal and a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute. Steve, thanks so much for joining us on Chicago's Morning Answer.
Well, thanks for having me. Good morning.
So how about that? What do we need to do? Just turn all these businesses over to folks like this guy?
Yeah, well, first of all, it would be unconstitutional to seize somebody's business just because they want to move somewhere else in the United States.
Oh, yeah? Huh.
Yeah, right. I mean, one of the greatest gifts that the founders left us is federalism, which is the idea that, the states can run themselves largely, but you have the ability to move wherever you want to. That's part of federalism. And what we're seeing right now in the United States is we have more states governed by one party or another completely. It's what's called in political terms trifectas than we've had in decades. In the early 90s, you only had about 12 or 13 states that one or another party completely dominated, meaning both the governorship and the legislature. But today we have 39 states that are either completely Democratic or completely Republican. And what's happening now is the policies of the states are really varying dramatically. And people are voting with their feet, showing you where they want to live under these different regimes. And it's really quite striking when you look at the numbers.
So you've written about this, the blue states' demographic nightmare. I'm glad for them to have a nightmare. I'm glad to actually, you know what? Sure, I live in Illinois. Do I want more taxpayers here to share the burden? Absolutely. But I actually want Illinoisans to be punished to the point where they change their policies. Do you think that is what will come out of this shift? And how big is this shift? And what does it mean for future elections?
Well, that's a really good question because you mentioned Illinois. Illinois, New York, and California have been losing people. It's called net domestic migration, have been losing people for more than 20 years, meaning they lose more people than they get every year. And partially this is what I just wrote about. The latest numbers are out, and they're rather stunning because all of the states that are losing the most people are democratically governed, except for one state, Louisiana. And all of the states that are gaining the most people are either what I call Republican trifectas, right, where the Republicans are dominating, or there are places that lean Republican. So it's very, very dramatic. Now, the thing is, Illinois has had negative domestic migration for more than 20 years. They still haven't changed their policies. Neither have California and New York. So that is a big political issue. In fact, what's happening is that the more that states like Illinois lose, the more they seem to be doubling down on their policies, everything from the higher and higher taxes to sanctuary cities and all of these different, so it raises a very interesting question. And part of the answer to that question is that if you look at surveys, the people who are leaving these places when they are surveyed, right, they are moderate and conservative people. So what's happening is the people most likely to vote for reform in a place like Illinois are the ones who are leaving to go elsewhere, and that makes it harder and harder to get reform.
So Steve, you mentioned this is going to be a two-part question. First of all, is Malanga an Italian name?
Absolutely, yeah, from Naples.
I knew you were. Yeah, we're in Napolitans as well. My family as well. First of all, so the first
from
question.
Avellino, actually.
We're at Campania, the town of Campania. Yeah, so I've been there to visit.
We're having a family reunion here.
By the way, are you wearing a black shirt right now? Because I believe it's genetically encoded in Italians to wear black all the time.
No, I'm wearing a Napoli Soccer Club shirt.
Okay, no, that works then. That's good too. Okay, so you mentioned something about alluded to states' rights and federalism. Because my belief is this, and I want you to comment on it. And then we got to talk about the immigration thing too, and what the whole point of that is. But I believe that these states, the blue states like Illinois, don't care that much about failure because I think in the back of their mind they think the federal government will bail them out. And here's the bad part: I think that they are correct. And I think if we just got back to states' rights and let a state fail, if they had stupid policy, it would be so much more beneficial to people. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I would say that it depends on who's in Washington if we're going to bail states out. I'll give you an example. I wrote a lot about this after the big recession of 2008, and it was more about cities because we had a lot of cities that they're just they couldn't borrow because the municipal market melted down. We had cities that were in really bad shape. A couple of them, of course, remember Detroit actually filed for bankruptcy, and there was a whole big thing about the federal government bailing out cities, and it was very unpopular. So unpopular that even Obama, when he was president, said, we're not going to do this. Okay? So, what's happening is we have this kind of what I call managed decline. It's constant decline, and the decline is actually shifting power because what's happening is states like Texas and Florida, Republican states, are gaining electoral votes, and states like New York and Illinois are losing electoral votes. So it's this managed decline, but bailouts are very unpopular in general. Good. So unpopular that even Obama said, no, we're not going to do this. We're not going to bail out these cities that went bankrupt. So it's a very interesting dynamic. What happens instead is these states continue raising taxes as they have more and more budget problems, and that only, of course, accelerates the migration.
It's the craziest thing, just to see how they handle it. Every time you're doing something wrong, you're charging people too much money. What's your solution? Charge them more money. Jeannie?
At what point, though, do these states who think that they are cash cows, where they can just continue on extracting resources and money from people who feel sort of stuck here? Like, I don't know, maybe they like Italian beef sandwiches. Maybe it's the Cubs that keep them here. In most cases, it's family that keeps them here. And the state just thinks that they have a captive audience for the most part, and they're going to continue on this pathway. I mean, and honestly, in Illinois, people keep waiting for the first pension fund to fail so that people finally wake up and say, we got to make a change. I don't see that happening. I just see the states becoming more polarized, more Democrats continuing their control. And you've got, at least in Illinois, this is a heavily state controlled by the unions. And so you've got the people that are insulated from the problems. You've got the people who are protective of the problems because that's their food source, the unions. You've got people that are dependent on the government services. And you've hollowed out the folks that are just in that private sector making a buck, but they continue to stay here. The Illinois Democrats think that they can continue with this model forever. And I am waiting for the tipping point to happen. And I've been waiting for a decade now. When's it happening?
Yeah. Yes. Well, for a couple of things. First of all, as I say in this piece that I wrote, the great, Scottish philosopher Adam Smith, who wrote, of course, about the wealth of nations and capitalism, he once said there's a whole lot of ruin in a nation. And what he meant by that is, he was talking about England at the time, he saw England declining. He said, but it's going to take time. And it's going to be relentless, but it's going to take time. Today we call that managed decline, and that's what's happening in a lot of democratic places. You mentioned people who are benefiting this, like unions, but at some point the money runs out, and we're already beginning to see this with public sector unions. I've written about them for 30 years. Right? What's happening now is that even the public sector union memberships are declining, and the reason they're declining is, first of all, they're charging their members more and more money, and more people are opting out now because the Supreme Court said they're allowed to do that. Right? So even the public sector unions are no longer growing the way they used to, and they're facing strain. School districts, right? School districts, not just in Illinois, but in places like New York and California, they're shrinking. They're shrinking because people are leaving, and particularly families are leaving. We're seeing tremendous declines, like 19,000, 20,000 fewer kids, under school-age kids in places like New York City, San Francisco, Los Angeles. So it's really beginning to impact their budgets quite a bit. I think what happens eventually is, this old phrase about how, slowly, 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 and then all at once, because you could see the crisis is every time you have a financial crisis, you raise taxes more, which drives more people away and more businesses away, and that creates an even greater crisis. And your answer to the greater crisis is to raise taxes again, and the cycle is accelerating. You can clearly see that in a place like Illinois or in California now, which the stunning turnaround in California from one of the great states, and economic engines of the country to a state that's become a fiscal basket case is just striking.
So think about California. It's just astounding is that you can make the argument that geographically they have an advantage over any place, not just in the country, but in the world. And they've blown that with their ridiculous policies. And we in Illinois should be able to look at that and say, okay, people go there for the sun and the mountains, and you can grow anything there. It's an amazing place. And they've still managed to mess it up. And we look at Illinois, we got kind of cold winters. I don't know if people noticed that. There's a little bit of incentive to get the heck out of here anyway, which, by the way, like from an economic standpoint, the advent of the air conditioner did kind of hasten the migration from north to south. So it's just, I mentioned it as kind of being funny, but it is a real thing. But again, if you tease out weather, you still see outward migrations, even from wonderful places where people go for the weather, like California. But anyway, I don't even know where I was going with that, Steve. Do you have an answer to whatever question I didn't ask?
Yeah, here's where you were going with that.
You tell me. Yeah, right.
Yeah. For years, states like New York and Illinois said, well, the net migration, it's just old people who are retiring and getting out of the states because it's too cold here. Okay. But that no longer works for California,
bingo.
Right? Because California, as you said, has the best weather in the world, except maybe for southern Italy. It's pretty nice.
No doubt about that, Steve. I was just there a couple months ago. We could do a whole segment on that. It was fantastic.
I spent 5 days in Positano the last summer. Let me tell you, boy. But California, right? And not only that, but now look at one of the biggest turnarounds is Colorado. Colorado was a mixed competitive state politically for years. Starting in 2019, it's become like a Democratic trifecta. They run the place, and they are getting more and more radical. And suddenly, Colorado goes from being a place where people are migrating to in the last 5 years, they're now like among the top 10 out in domestic migration. What's happening in Colorado is like a mirror of what happened in California. And you're saying to yourself, wait a minute, these are supposed to be great places to live. How is it happening there? So it's unmistakable now what's going on.
Yeah, by the way, to the Colorado thing, I'm selling my Colorado home in April. I'm selling my Colorado home, and
property taxes there are through the roof.
They're going through the roof, and I did not realize this, but they're tacking on like a 5% capital gains tax to the federal government for me investing in their state. It's so irritating to me, but I'm getting out of Colorado.
Yeah, and one of the things we're going to see is like what's happening in California now. They're trying to pass this billionaires tax, which is not just.
Good luck with that.
It's not just a tax on income, it's a tax on your actual wealth. And that's essentially unconstitutional. So it'll be very interesting to see. Even if that passes, okay, it'll immediately be challenged. But the whole idea that this guy in New York saying, we don't let people leave, this is the whole thing, or exit taxes. Like
Right.
Europe, they're trying to pass exit taxes now. One of the things that the European Union did is it really screwed people because basically you can't have an exit tax on someone who goes from one place in Europe to another, and people are flooding to places like Poland, which are prosperous, and they're leaving places like France and Germany. So, but that's the next thing they're going to try. But thank God we do have a U.S. Constitution, and those things are not legal. But they're going to be tried anyway. They're going to be tested in the courts.
All right. He's Steve Malanga, a contributing editor to the City Journal, which I highly encourage people to sign up for their emails. They put out great information on a variety of topics. He's a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute. Steve, thank you so much for joining us on Chicago's Morning Answer.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. And we'll be right back. This is WIND Chicago.
Before you see it on TV, share it on Facebook, or read about it in the paper, hear it here first. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
To commemorate President's Day, Hasseless Mattress is offering our fellow Americans Washington Monument-size savings on Beautyrest. Our employee-free showrooms are filled with Beautyrest mattresses vying for your vote.